The snow had begun to fall before sunset, blanketing the countryside in a hush so pure it felt sacred. Lanterns glowed like golden pearls outside the grand iron gates of Ravenshire Hall, where the annual winter ball was about to begin. It was an evening reserved for nobility, whispers, and the weight of power. And yet, among the polished carriages and glittering gowns, one woman stepped out quietly, her gloved hands trembling around a borrowed shawl. Lady Clara Whitmore, widow of a fallen soldier, had not attended a ball in years. She had neither fortune nor favor left, only courage borrowed from necessity. Her late husband's debts had stripped her of everything but a tiny cottage and a determination to keep her dignity intact. When the invitation had arrived, mistakenly addressed to her late husband, she had almost thrown it into the fire. But something within her, a flicker of defiance, or perhaps longing, had whispered, "Go." Inside, the ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers. 1,000 candles turned the marble floors into liquid gold. Laughter floated like champagne bubbles, and violins sang of winters long gone. Clara's dress, though mended and modest, carried her mother's lace and her late husband's courage. She stepped through the threshold, breath steady, heart racing like a trapped bird. No one noticed her at first. The ladies sparkled in jewels worth small kingdoms, and the men carried the kind of confidence born of privilege. But then the crowd seemed to shift, as if drawn toward a single magnetic force. Murmurs rippled through the hall. "He has arrived. The Duke of Ravenshire. Lord Adrian Blackthorne." The man whispered about in corridors and feared across drawing rooms. It was said he had a heart colder than the winter sea, and that mercy was a word he'd buried long ago beside his late fiancée. He had returned from years abroad richer, harder, untouchable. When he entered, the air itself seemed to still. Tall, dark-haired, eyes the color of storm clouds before lightning, he looked every bit the legend they said he was. And it was into this man that Clara collided. She had been retreating from the crush of the crowd, clutching her shawl, when a sudden movement sent her stumbling back. The impact was soft yet jolting, and for a breathless second, she found herself staring up into eyes that seemed to see everything and forgive nothing. The music faltered. Conversations dimmed. Time itself paused. The Duke's gaze was unreadable, but piercing enough to make her knees tremble. She stammered an apology, bowing her head, expecting a sharp rebuke. Instead, he said nothing. He merely looked at her long, searchingly, as though her very presence had disturbed the careful armor he wore. Then, quietly, he stepped aside, offering his gloved hand. For reasons she couldn't name, she took it. And just like that, the world seemed to tilt. Later that evening, as the ball whirled on, Clara found herself near the balcony, watching snow fall against the dark sky. She thought she'd escaped notice, but the Duke was already there, standing in silence like a shadow carved from stone. He spoke at last, not in command, but curiosity. He asked her name. She gave it, voice trembling. And for the first time in years, he smiled, not a full one, but the ghost of something that had once been human warmth. They talked. About the war. About loss. About how cold the world had grown for those left behind. Each word peeled away another layer of distance between them. She spoke of her late husband, how he had died fighting for a cause that had forgotten him. He spoke of his fiancée, how she had died waiting for him to return. Grief met grief. And somewhere between sorrow and silence, a quiet understanding bloomed. The following weeks brought whispers. The Duke had begun to change. he was seen at the orphanage he'd once ignored, repairing roofs and funding winter coats. His staff spoke of laughter echoing once again through the cold halls of Ravenshire. He sent food to widows, medicine to miners, and warmth to those the world had forgotten. And always, quietly, Lady Clara's name lingered on his lips. But not everyone welcomed change. The Duchess Dowager, his aunt and guardian of tradition, warned him that his newfound compassion would ruin his standing. "You are not a saint, Adrian," she said. "You are the Duke of Ravenshire. Remember who you are." He did remember. But for the first time, he wished to forget. Winter deepened. The snow grew heavier, and so did the silence in Clara's small cottage. Her savings had run out. The local landlord had raised her rent. She had sold nearly everything of value except her wedding ring and her pride. When the knock came at her door one evening, she thought it was the landlord again. Instead, it was him. The Duke stood there, snow in his hair, a look of fierce determination in his eyes. He said nothing, just held out a sealed envelope. Inside, she found a deed. To her cottage. Paid in full. Her breath caught. She shook her head, tears rising. "I can't accept this," she whispered. But his expression softened, and he simply said, "Then don't. Just live." She never saw him as the Duke again after that moment. Only as the man who understood what it meant to lose everything and still choose to give. Months passed. Spring melted the snow, and the gardens of Ravenshire bloomed again. The annual summer masquerade arrived, and once more, Clara found herself stepping into the Duke's world, this time not as an intruder, but as a guest. When the orchestra began to play, he appeared beside her, his gaze gentler, his voice quiet. No one dared approach them. The feared Duke and the humble widow moved together beneath the chandeliers, as if the universe had written them into the same story after all. There were no declarations. No grand confessions, only the soft, steady rhythm of hearts learning how to heal together. As they danced, the snow outside began to fall again, though it was months too early. She laughed softly at the sight, and he smiled. For the first time since tragedy had broken them both, they found warmth not in riches, nor in titles, but in kindness. Years later, when people spoke of the Duke of Ravenshire, they no longer called him the most feared. They spoke instead of the man who rebuilt his lands, who fed the poor, and who loved a widow with a soul braver than gold. And when winter returned each year, snowflakes would fall softly upon Ravenshire Hall, where two hearts once collided and changed the course of countless lives. Because sometimes, the most powerful act in a cruel world, is simply to see someone who has been invisible for too long. Final message: love does not always roar. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, like snow falling on forgotten hearts, melting the cold that fear once built.